Hello YouTube, today we're doing another program with you and we're going to work on Christopher's Sheehan's program, and he tells me that he built a home gym, that he has a power rack, 400 pounds of total weight, and that he squats every day. That's an important indication. As far as the rest of the details that I get, he also lets me know that he plays rugby, which is very important. To keep in mind, if you have a program you want to send, you need to tell me the activities you do outside, because if you don't, I'm going to assume the only thing you do is lifting. And the amount of tonnage and the amount of recovery windows I'm going to apply to the review of the program is going to be different. And he tells me that from what he's given me, he potentially wants to transition into a push-pull legs with a heavy phase and a light phase, which would be 3 days light, 3 days heavy. And he wants to integrate sprinting, which is an excellent exercise, and more cardio. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I review what he tells me he does. First off, squatting every day is excellent. It's an application of something you could call transcendent training, which I reviewed in the program reviews. It is also the Widowmaker squats, but it's different in its application when it comes to volume and intensity, because of course, you have volume, frequency, and intensity. These three variables are the most important things for your training, by far. And they make up what we call programming for the most part. You cannot have the three of them applied to a single movement pattern at once. It's not possible. Because if you squat heavy with a lot of volume every day, something's gonna snap. Something's gonna break. It's not doable, at least for naturals, and I would even argue that it's not the best for enhanced athletes. So as far as squatting every day goes, it's a type of template that is going to require you to have high frequency, so that's one value that's here. So there's going to have to be a value that is sacrificed. For the most part, with squat every day, the value that people sacrifice is volume, meaning that they squat every day, they go up to 90%, so they still have high intensity, but they barely do any work. So the tonnage that they get at the end of one day is low, but the tonnage they get at the end of the entire week is high. I will review that practice in another video, but basically the importance and the value of this practice is that you get a ton of neurological pathway training, and you get very efficient at squatting. I would argue that in terms of pure hypertrophy, the Widowmaker squat is better. I might even make a video about it next week because it's actually very interesting. So let me write that down. Widowmaker versus squat every day. Okay, so I'm not going to expand on that because I will make a video on it. So let's move on. Just so you know, Christopher is doing that. He's squatting every day. And he tells me from a daily minimum to a max based on how he feels, which is a good way to regulate the intensity for that type of practice. So on Monday, he opens with squats, which in a sense is a good thing. You can either open with squat or close the training with squat every day. I've seen people do both. It both has its benefits and inconveniences. Of course, if you start with it first, you're going to be fresh and you're going to be at peak performance. For someone who does rugby, which is a sport that is extremely reliant on lower body strength, I think it's a good way of applying the method. After that, he does overhead press 3x5. 3x5 on an overhead press to me is a little bit on the low side of the volume, especially because if I look through your training, that is the only vertical press you do. As far as rugby players go, your shoulders are going to play an integral role in stabilizing the tackles, because it's not like American football. You actually have to accompany the person you tackle, as you know. So I would tell you to, if you don't want to up the frequency, I would tell you to do 6x5 with evolving rep ranges in the mix. So you do a 3x5 for sure for stabilized volume, and then you do a 3x2 to 5 where you're going to push the intensity. That way you're going to get the best of both worlds. You are going to touch heavy weights and you're still going to get that volume, and I guarantee you that you're going to progress faster on the overhead press, which is tough to progress on because it's going to give you more flexibility to manipulate the weight and to push the intensity. After that, there's a rep range that's just by itself, um, which I don't know why. I hope it's not me who didn't copy paste it properly. If it's me, I'm going to pin your comment when you comment, so just let me know, make the corrections to the program, and I will answer to you, but I don't see what the 2x10 is. After that, you do pull-ups 5 to 5x10, okay, that's evolving rep range for pull-ups, it's not terrible. I always advise people go to failure with pull-ups and calisthenics in general, because your ability to go back to baseline is going to be very high on these movements. So that's your Monday. It's small, it's a small day, but because you do rugby on the side and it's your main pursuit and you do squat every day, I understand. Now on Tuesday you do squat for a daily minimum. So you do your squat every day, but that's the day you don't push it. So I'm going to assume that this is the day where you train rugby, which means you just want to get some knee flexions in, okay. On Wednesday you do squat, so the same approach. Bench press 3x5. Bench press 3x5 is potentially the best application of a 3x5, so stick at it if you want. You again added, so I think what you call the 2x10 is a back off set of the set that came out before. Okay, that makes much more sense. So you do a 3x5, we're going to go back to Monday. You do a 3x5 on overhead press and then you do a 2x10. I like that approach for additional volume. The issue I have is that you already do a fixated rep range with your 3x5. And then you do another fixated rep range that's even worse by my standards with a 2x10. Because you're either sandbagging or it's not junk volume, but it's not relevant intensity. You're too high on the volume side and not enough on the intensity side. So I would say do a 3 by 2 to 5 and then do your 2 sets of 10. That way you still get the volume and the pump at the end. And for the squat daily minimum on the Tuesday and then the 3 by 10, same logic, but in this case it doesn't really apply because the squat daily minimum is the opposite. It's very high on the intensity and it's low on the volume. So the 3x10 then makes perfect sense, stick at it. It's still not perfect, but I understand that usually when people throw in those fixated rep ranges, it's just a way to get volume in. They don't really care if they progress on that. It's not their main pathway to progression and putting weight on the bar, so that's fine. I know that it brings security to the program, and it's sometimes good to just get a pump like this and not worry about it. So to go back to Wednesday, sorry about that, you get your 3x5 on the bench, and then you do a 2x10. So you pretty much, that's a pretty good application in my opinion. Because the bench, at least for me, I've always found that for hypertrophy, because again, this is an hypertrophy channel, I review your programs based on that, you make better gains when you stay lower in intensity and higher in volume when it comes to bench press. Because the bench is really, a lot of people disagree with that, but the bench to me is the most skilled of the 3 lifts. It really is. Meaning that if you miss groove, you can lose 10 or 20 pounds on the bench. And sometimes you get that perfect rep where the weight feels like nothing. With squats and deadlifts, there's always a way to grind a misgrooved rep, even if it's not safe. With the bench, if you can't get it up, you can't get it up. There is no grinding it. If you don't stay with it, you're not grinding it. So I like your approach, and then you do pull up 3x10, again, not bad. I like the focus on vertical pulls that you have. I always advise people to do more vertical pulls than they do horizontal pulls. It's going to deload the spine, especially for a sport like rugby. I don't know what position you play, but if you're in the melee, your spine is going to be compressed a ton. So decompressing it is really nice. And then you do barbell curls 2x10. That's a little bit, it's not enough volume or intensity to really do anything. So I would say do a 4 by 8 to 12. I don't know why you would. The issue I have is that if you want bigger biceps, then actually go after it, right? Because the 2x10 is not doing anything. And if you don't care, then just don't do it. But I would tell you to do more on the barbell curls. It's not going to tire you out. And as far as supersets go, you can totally on the Monday superset the overhead press with the pull-ups. You can, on the Wednesday, superset the pull-ups with the barbell curls. Now, supersetting pull-ups and barbell curls is not synergistic at all, but it's also not going to take away from your ability to perform the lift, so it's up to you. And as far as that goes, on the Thursday, I would say that on the Thursday, it's the same. It's the first time in the program first off that I see a hip hinge. That is not also a knee flexion. So you do squats, then you do Romanian deadlifts, 5x10. 5x10, even though it is technically in the rep range for fixated rep ranges that I don't like, because it's getting dangerously close to a 10x10. With Romanian deadlift, it's okay. Because it's a lift that if you want size to build up, you're not going to push to failure. You're going to go through the full range of motion. You're not going to stop below the kneecap. And it's the hamstrings are a muscle group that I find have the ability to reproduce muscular endurance very easily, and they respond very well to it because they're very adept to doing that. So that's good, because it's one lift where I would say, hey, if you got 10 reps on the first and 10 reps on the last, you still push yourself. You still had the ability to grind and really get that burn in. It's not true for a bench, for example. If you do a 5x10 on the bench, yeah, you're sandbagging like crazy. Same for a deadlift or a squat. Romanian deadlifts are a little bit different. And then you do face pulls with bend that you can superset with the Romanian deadlift. You don't give me a rep range, which is good, meaning that you go very high. That's excellent for your rotator cuff. It's going to keep your shoulders healthy. And build your upper back, right? Because you don't do a ton of shrugs or horizontal pulls. So you will need some for the upper back as well. Friday, you do squat. You do overhead press. You do a lot of overhead press. Okay, I'm sorry. When I first scanned the program, I was looking for OHP. That being said, volume on OHP on Monday and Friday is not going to fry your shoulders because it's a safe lift if you do it properly and you don't push in front of you, you push on top of you. So no problem here, you can still do it, especially because this is an intensity day. So you do max out on the overhead press, which is a good way to progress. And then you do 1 to 3 back off sets, so you really get a lot of vertical push volume. It's excellent. After that, you are doing pull-ups or inverted rows based on fatigue. I would tell you to focus on inverted rows and do them supinated, do them pronated, do them neutral, do them a ton, because it is your only horizontal pull. And as I said, they're not they're not critical, but you get so much vertical pull volume in your program that you can cut off the pull-ups for that day and do inverted rows. So that day I really like. I mean, I have nothing to say about that. I wouldn't touch anything on this day. And then Saturday, you told me that, okay, Saturday is still a squat every day. Barbell rows, so you get your second serving of horizontal rows. But it's, even though you follow up, it depends on how you can manage fatigue on horizontal rows. For me, any type of pulls, if you take the lower back and the hammies out of the equation, I can do that day in and day out. My upper back recovers like this. But for you, if you feel like it's hurting your progress, you can move the inverted rows on Wednesday in place of the pull-ups and do pull-ups on Friday. That way you can be fresh for your Saturday rows. You don't give, okay, you give me a rep range. So you do, I think it's a superset of rows, extensions, which I suppose are triceps extensions, and curls. And all of these are 3 by 10 to 15. Excellent rep range for barbell rows, for extensions, and for curls. I would argue that curls might benefit from higher intensity, but you already do the high intensity stuff on barbell curls on Wednesday, so especially if you apply my 8 to 10 rep range. Which doesn't mean that you need to stick to 2 sets, by the way. Still go up to 4 sets. Your biceps will recover. 3 days to recover for your biceps is more than enough. They're a small muscle group, they recover fairly fast. And then, so all of that is looking good. I think the way the lifts are programmed and the way everything falls together is very synergistic, so that's good. On Sunday, you go all out on squat and you max. And then you tell me a little bit more about why you squat every day. I will expand on that in the video. I think squatting every day is the best way to gain strength on the squat. Squatting with the Widowmaker star maybe once every 4 days is the best way to put on size. And it makes total sense. One is skewed towards intensity, one is skewed towards volume. What you want is strength. And that's perfectly fine because you need that to apply it to your sport. And you say that you think it takes away from the cardio aspect. I'm going to say that if you get winded from everyday squats, you need to work on your cardio more. So I do think that starting to do more cardio and especially sprints, because that's what squat every day is. It's a sprint. It replicates the cardiovascular endurance needed in doing several sprints in a row, which is how sprinters train, by the way. They rarely do one sprint all out and sprints before that where they go slower. They try to replicate the ability to go as fast as possible for several sets. Okay, all good. So for that Sunday, you just do that one squat and you go all the way and you really push the bill, which when you squat every day, eventually there's a day you're going to have to do that. Because if not, you're never really entering an intensity window that is so stressful that it forces change. But you put 50 pounds on your squat, so that's good. And as far as transforming that into a push-pull leg, which is the challenge of this, now that I gave you modifications for that template that you can still run, I'm going to tell you how I would turn that into what you want, which is a 6 days push-pull legs with heavy and light phase. From what I see here, as far as push-pull legs go, you can take some portions of your days and integrate them in the different days and then vary the intensity to get the results that you want. What I would say also is the program you have right now is very conducive to doing sprints and longer cardio on the side, because there are days that are very minimum in terms of tonnage that you still are going to be able to go out and do something. But it's still, if your focus is really going to be cardio for your sport, it still is going to be tough to apply. Why? Because you have so many days where I wouldn't send you on sprints afterwards because your lower body is going to be so tired already. And sprinting is also a question of posture or cardio in general. If your posture collapses, you're not going to be able to push the cardiovascular endurance of the lungs and the heart. So what I would do for you is, for the heavy phase, I would take your Monday and I would, and I'm going to assume also, and sorry if I repeat myself, but I'm going to assume that you're going to let go of the squat every day. That you're going to milk the gains that you are making now and that you're going to then transition into something different. So I'm going to base it as if you were not going to squat every day anymore. So for the push, you take your Monday, and that's the heavy push, you take your Monday, and that's going to be your heavy push. Because it has everything you need. The only thing that is lacking is an horizontal press. So you can add the type of horizontal press that you would like. It can be a dip, it can be a bench, it can be whatever. For your pull, I think you should start doing deadlifts, because I don't see deadlifts in your program, and pulls from the floor are, in my opinion, very important. Some people say they are not that good for athleticism, but I'm not saying do conventional deadlifts. You can do any type of pull from the floor. If it's a trap bar, it's a trap bar. If it's a Jefferson, it's a Jefferson. But you need some of that. So for the pull, that's where you throw in the deadlift. That's where you're going to throw in a lot more horizontal pulls. So all of the rows that you have in the program, you're going to apply that. And because the deadlifts are going to be an easy way to accumulate tonnage, after that you can finish up with some calves, abs, and vertical pulls thrown in there. You don't need to do more than that for the heavy day. And for the legs, well, you're going to do squats, of course, and you can also throw in Romanian deadlift on the legs. The way it's going to work out for the Romanian deadlift is it's less taxing than a deadlift, in my opinion. So it's still going to be something you can repeat. And after that, the light phase, which I'm not a big fan of, by the way. Doing heavy, medium, and light days, I think it's a simplistic way to approach volume and intensity manipulation. That being said, if it's what you want, for the light day, you're going to basically do the exact same thing. You're going to replicate the same things. I would say that because you do rugby on the side, on the light phase, you can get rid of the deadlift completely. Don't deadlift during the light phase. Just do horizontal pulls, vertical pulls, and call it a day. Do abs and calves and call it a day. You're still going to do your squats, but you're going to do them lighter, of course, with the Romanian deadlift for the hip hinge, because that's important. If you don't want to do the Romanian deadlift on the light day, you can do back hyperextensions. And after that, I would also say that because of your pursuit of cardio, I'm not going to modify the push-pull legs because I've said it before, I don't like the push-pull leg, the way it follows each other, simply because on pull days, I expect you to do deadlifts. But then you do legs afterwards, so you're going to be tired, and squats are, in my opinion, tougher to recover from than deadlift, and they suffer from postural fatigue more than deadlifts do. So here, we're sort of stuck in a situation where I would like to do something, for example, like pull, push legs, and then a rest day. That's something you can do. But what we have to keep in mind that eventually here, there's going to be the cardio aspect that comes into play. And the cardio is going to have to go somewhere. So even if I give you a push day in between or a rest day in between the legs and the pull, that might be day that goes to cardio, but that's okay in my opinion, because you're going to do sprints and longer cardio. Sprints are tiring, they are, but they are not the type of lift that are going to lead to, cardio that are going to lead to injury if you do them a day after a squat. That being said, if the day that follows up is squat, it might hinder performance. So this is how we're gonna do it. First off, if you want to do longer cardio 2 or 3 times a week, do it. I understand that it's going to be very important for rugby because sadly, there are certain sports where you should be training in short bursts of intensity because that's what the sport tells you to practice for. Like if you're in a ring for 3 minutes, work for those 3 minutes. Rugby is sort of, it's a cruel mistress because you're going to have to run around that huge field all the time at medium speed and have the ability to sprint. So a type of cardio that I would really recommend for someone like you is called the Indian run or the fartlek. Fartlek has different applications. It can be either the Indian run or running in nature. I'm going to just talk about the Indian run right now, which is a completely non-PC word. I don't think anyone uses it anymore. But the idea is you give yourself a minute to jog and then you sprint for 5 seconds. And then you jog and then you sprint for 5 seconds. You can modify the time. But for me, when you practice a sport that is slow, steady cardio and then bursts of intensity, this is the best way to train. But I'm getting sort of out of topic here. I'm sorry about that. So what I would do if you want to transition the program into a push-pull leg, you're going to be doing a pull, push, legs. The sprints are going to be taking place on a day off that is going to be either before the push. So you're going to do pull, day off where you do your cardio and your sprint, pull, and then after the pull, because of the legs coming afterwards, you're not going to be able to do that. And then after legs, you can do the day after legs, you can do the sprint and the cardio because afterwards comes a push, so you don't need to be fresh in the lower body. It's going to kill your frequency, which is why you might need to not do a heavy phase and a light phase. You might need to mix the two, meaning that just because you have a push-pull leg coming doesn't mean that the 3 of them need to be heavy. You can have 1 heavy and 2 lights, if that makes sense. And on the days where you do light, if you do light pull and legs, you can still do sprints and cardio on that day. It's not going to be detrimental. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. If you want to apply that 6-day push-pull leg with 3 heavy, 3 light, use the light days to do your cardio so that you don't have to always take days off and be on the lookout for whether or not the sprint are going to follow or precede the lower body lifts. So the heavy days are the ones where you're going to have to be careful for that, but for the light day, you can go all out, if that makes sense. And that's going to be that. That was a very interesting program review. Thank you for that, Christopher. I will pin your comments, so let me know if you have any questions about what I just said. I hope it will help you progress, get stronger, get bigger, and get transform into a beast on the rugby field. And I hope you and everyone who watched this video had a very good day. See you soon.